So let's talk about how specific items should fit. All right, so this is where we get a little bit nuanced. Now you should have a very clear understanding, though, of just what we're looking for as a general principle, because you can create or carry that same framework through to basically any item, right? Even footwear, right? It shouldn't be squeezing you and so tight that there's tension and be uncomfortable, but it shouldn't be so loose that you're sliding around in it, that there's excessive fabric. So just use that as your guiding principle. With no matter what body type you have, you can see how that holds true, and that it's, again, an irrefutable framework. It's like, just give yourself just a little bit of room so that the body is not squeezed and it's also not creating more width, and that the clothing lays the way that it was intended. So let's talk about how specific items should fit. And we're going to start with pants. Really big one for a lot of guys, right? Most guys struggle with getting pants to fit correctly. I would imagine that you've had an issue with that in the past. So let's talk about how to get pants to fit correctly, or at least what you should be looking at when you're buying a pair of pants. So there's a couple different measurements that we need to go over just really quickly so you know what you're looking at. The first one is the waist size. You're going to be very familiar with this, right? So this is the circumference of the waist. So typically most guys are going to be between a 30 and like a 36, right? So that's kind of your typical waist. The next thing here is the rise. Okay, so the rise is just, you can think about it as the distance from the crotch to the waistband. Okay, so you can, just as a general way of thinking about it. So rise can be higher or lower. So sometimes you can have higher rise pants that will sit up here, or you can have lower rise pants that will sit down here. Usually pants are going to be somewhere between an 8 to 10 inch rise, somewhere in that range. And so rise is just how high the pant sits on your waist. That's how you can really think about it. It's the distance from here to here. All right. Then we have our inseam. So inseam is quite literally what it sounds like. It's the inside seam of the pant, right? So from this connection here all the way down to the bottom, that is the inseam, okay? And that is typically, again, somewhere between 30 and, usually for guys, it's going to be 30 to 34, unless you're insanely tall. But I can tell you, in about a decade of doing this, I don't think I've ever dressed somebody in a 36-inch inseam, maybe 5 times. So inseam size is going to be that measurement there. You'll notice that I have these labeled as size because these are actual measurements, right? So these are not something that can be or would be made up. So we talked about it before, a rise is typically going to be 8 to 10 inches. Inseam, where it's quite literally the measurement. The waist, it's quite literally the measurement. Now, when we get to cut or fit, that's a little bit of a different story. So when we're looking at the width of things, remember that that's the cut or the fit of the item. And that's what the brand gets to make up. Now, there's some general standard kind of practices with what width a certain cut kind of is, or a general shape. We'll talk about that in a bit. But just know that, like, these are actual measurements, right? These are what the brand makes up. So the next part of this is just how wide the thing is. So we have the measurements dialed, but now what we're looking at is just, well, how wide is the leg, right? Is the leg of the pant really, really wide, or is it really, really narrow? And so you're looking there at the width through the thigh and then the width through the calf, right? So near the leg opening, we call that the taper. So if you've ever heard about a fit that's called a slim taper or athletic taper, all that means is narrowing towards the bottom of the leg. It means this, that towards the bottom, it narrows. So the taper is just how narrow it gets towards the bottom of the leg. All right, so when we talk about the perfect length of pants, length is measured by that inseam, right? So that's the second number whenever you're looking at a pair of pants. And the idea here is that we want not excessive fabric, right? But we don't want something too short either. So the length should be between a half break and a no break. And don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like, right? But the term that you're looking for is a quarter break. This is a tailoring term that you can use with a tailor or with people in a store too as well. But I'll show you visually what that looks like. Now, this is a chart that denotes break. Break just means how much fabric folds or breaks over a shoe, right? You can see that we have here at a full break, one full fold of fabric over the shoe. We call that a full break, right? No break, no fold of fabric. See how that works? Right. And so this is a standard tailoring chart that's been around for like 50, probably 100 years. So like these are very, very standard measurements. So any tailor that has even been doing it for a day will understand these. But it's also just helpful to give you a visual reference and know what the heck you're talking about. And so again, most guys are going to look good somewhere between, that half break and that no break look at about a quarter break. And you can see that that just falls right over the shoe without being too short. So no excessive fabric through here. See how that kind of lays here? This is what we would consider to be just about no break, but it's still not too short. Now, again, there's plenty of guys that want to do ankle looks and stuff like that, have it be a little bit shorter or maybe even a little longer. This is the stuff that's going to keep you timeless. You can push on those walls a little bit, but just know what you're doing, know where you should be, right? And that also, if you're outside of the conventional sort of tailoring wisdom, that eventually whatever you're doing is going to go out of style. It's always the case. If you stick in the middle of the lane, right, you really don't have to worry about sort of the ebbs and flows of fashion if you just stay sort of timeless. And the way that you do that is by getting things or looking at things that we've done for close to a century, right? So anyway, keep in mind that if you want to go closer to no break, so the less break that you have, the more narrow the pants should be, or the more tapered the pants should be. So you can use those two terms kind of interchangeably. I want you to think about it like this. If I cut this guy's pants off right here, we want to do one of those neat little ankle looks that a lot of people do. Well, that's going to look really funky, right? So as you move down, right, as the pant gets higher, we need that to get more and more tapered. So there's this really inverse relationship between those two. Most of the time, quarter break, just tell your tailor that somewhere in between, typically half break and no break is perfect. All right. So that's what you should be looking at for inseam. Let's talk about the waist. So a lot of guys, I find, just as a blanket statement, I'm going to say this. Most guys wear their pants too low and they wear the waist too big. And so getting the waist a little bit tighter is something that I almost see all guys need to do, even just a little bit. And there's a lot of benefits to this too, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. But just so you can know the measurement, right? The waist should be loose enough to where you can fit 2 fingers inside the waistband, but no more than that. And that's going to be typically right about the hip bone here. So you should be able to fit about 2 fingers right in that hip bone area, but no more than that. A better way to look at this too is that you should be able to walk around without needing a belt. If you can walk around freely without needing a belt, then your pants probably fit decent enough. But again, a lot of people are wearing their pants just a bit too loose, maybe for a comfort issue, maybe because they ebb and flow in weight, who knows? But a lot of guys wear them too loose. So if you have something like tension lines around the fly, right? So you have things kind of pulling at the zipper. You see the pockets kind of pulling open a little bit. The waist is then going to be too small. You'll see and probably feel some of that tension right there. The pants, where they should sit, a lot of guys, this is one of the biggest questions I get asked is like, where the heck do I put my pants? The pants will tell you. So the pant is supposed to get as high up on the waist as possible without causing discomfort in the groin area, right? So without, well, for lack of a better term, bottoming out, right? You need to get that pretty high. Most guys, they wear their pants, whether it's a suit trouser, chino, whatever, they wear it at the same place. They're like, well, this is where I put my pants. And the thing about that is, we talked about this already, rise is very different in a lot of pants. Some pants have a very high rise, typically suit trousers and dress trousers, much higher rise. And so they're meant to sit higher on the waist. This right here, where you keep your pants, should always end up at your groin, regardless of how high the rise is, right? So the rise dictates where the pants sits on your waist. So just use that as a benchmark, as high as possible, without causing discomfort. So again, lack of a better term, we're bottoming out, basically, all right? So that's when you're looking at the waist there. And then another key to tell that you're wearing your pant is in the right spot is that your back pockets are pretty squarely on your butt. See, a lot of guys have their back pockets much further below the butt. Now, this will solve any sort of flat butt issue that you've ever had in your life. If anyone has ever told you that you have a flat butt, this is the way to fix that. Number one, you're probably wearing your waist too loose and you're probably wearing it too low. And I'll give you an example. You can see the shape to this guy's bum here, right? So we can see that it starts right there, right about there, okay? And so let's theoretically pull up his pants. So we're going to take this line here. We're going to give it a good old yank here. Now think about what happens to this fabric here. The reason that this fabric is doing this is because the manufacturer put all of this here to accommodate the butt. So that needs to be here. And so if you move that up, all that fabric disappears, and then it gives you this nice sort of round appearance through here. So that's a really easy way to fix that. And then also, if the waist is a little tighter, you can think about it like this. If the waist is tighter, the legs, the tubes of fabric, they don't have a lot of room. And so your butt will basically protrude out of it. Think about what happens if you go down 2 numbers in your waist size. It's not going to fit in the waist, I know, but think about what would probably happen to your butt, right? You'd probably be like, well, yeah, that's actually looking pretty tight back there. And so again, like if you bring this up and then you slim in the waist, that usually solves this problem. We have fixed the flat butt issue for 500 guys probably at this point, just simply by just yanking up their pants. So maybe give that a go before you let your wife tell you that you got a flat butt. Okay, so the width through the pant, right? So again, this is a cut or fit of the pant. So ideally what it's doing is it's mimicking the way that your leg looks, okay? So it starts, if you think about your normal leg, okay, if you just strip down naked, you start a little wider and then you go a little narrower. That's how that works. Unless you have some weird freakish calf, that's the way a normal human leg looks. And that's how it's going to appear most visually pleasing too. And so the idea here is that your pant sort of mimics that. It follows the shape of the leg without squeezing it and without engulfing it. So again, we should be able to grab a small pinch of fabric from anywhere throughout the leg, but you can see that it follows the natural arc and the natural shape of the leg. And so regardless of what the fit or the cut is called, it needs to do this. So in your head, don't associate the fit or the cut with how it's going to look. So if you have pants that say, let me put it like this. If I had this pair of pants on and they said, big boy, fat boy fit, super, super, super duper extra loose, I wouldn't care, right? Because visually it's working. Conversely, if this said skinny mini teeny pants or jean fit, whatever, I wouldn't care either, right? Because visually it's doing what we need it to do. So many guys get hung up on the stupid label of whatever the fit says. It does not matter. 0, right? It does not matter. You're just choosing a fit that's going to get you the result. And so if something is too wide, right? So if a cut or fit is too wide, then we know that we need to probably go down a little bit. If it's too tight, we need to go up a little bit, regardless of what the waist size is, regardless of what the inseam is. We don't change any of that. We just change the fit. All right. So let's talk about shorts really quick. Shorts, pretty simple, same deal, right? So the waist you're going to go over the same metrics with the waist, 2 fingers in the waistband, walk around without needing a belt. We have different cuts or fits through the thigh as well. But you can see here that we can grab a pinch, but there's no excessive fabric. Imagine how this would look if it was this wide, right? Kind of ridiculous. You can see that I could probably grab a pinch of fabric right from here on his leg, and we're done. Inseam size on shorts, obviously different than pants. Inseam, you can still get measured on shorts. A lot of times shorts won't come with the inseam size. Nowadays, they are more so than not. But most guys are going to be between a 6 and a 9 inch inseam. If it's more than 9, it's usually not going to work for you. If it's less than 6, unless you're a little bit shorter, have shorter legs, it's probably not going to be very good for you either. So what you can do is you can find your optimal length for shorts. You can try a 6, a 7, an 8, and a 9 and just see what fits. And then you know it. And then you can always just go back and buy that. It's pretty easy. Where we want this to end is at least an inch above the knee, which is about right here, but no more than 3 inches, which would probably be about here. Right? So there's a point where this starts to just look like underwear and that we need to cover some of the leg. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but you want at least an inch above the knee, but no higher than 3. All right. And of course we come back to our rule of being able to grab a pinch, but not a handful. You can see that I'm just trying to drill this into your head so that you know it forever and ever and ever. Okay, common cuts, fits of stuff. And this goes for pretty much all pants. So jeans, chinos, dress trousers, you can generally find all of these fits. Not all brands will offer all of these fits, but these are some of the common ones that you might encounter. Straight is exactly what it sounds like. straight all the way through the leg. Okay. What athletic does is it gives you more room in the thigh and in the seat back through here, so in your butt, and then it narrows a little bit towards the calf. Really good for guys who work out a lot, right? So if you have bigger thighs, if you have a bigger butt, just generally, maybe that's your body composition, or if you work out a lot, that's a really good one. Slim is basically standard nowadays. Slim will fit most average American guys off the rack. The guy who does a little bit of working out, who doesn't have massive legs or, really skinny legs. Slim is going to work for most guys. And this is the first fit that you should try. It's actually pretty dead center, right? And so usually the first thing that I'm going to try with a client, if we're in person, is a slim fit, and then we can go up or we can go down. We can get slimmer. So the next version is going to be a slim taper. And what a slim taper is, slim just slims in the whole leg, but it keeps it fairly straight, right? Slim taper slims in the leg, and then it narrows quite a bit towards the bottom, right? Remember that term taper just means narrowing towards the bottom. And then skinny just does it even more, right? So skinny is going to be your most tightest. Some people or brands will call this cigarette fit as well, but skinny fit, cigarette fit basically just mean the tightest version of a pant that you can get. Now, just as a fun little story, a caveat, just to show you that none of this stuff matters, I dress a lot of my big boy clients, maybe some portly gentlemen, in skinny fit pants. And you might go, no, that's impossible. Well, no. When you have a waist that's maybe a size 40 because you have a very, very big belly, right? And we have to get all that in there. The legs at a 40 waist, they get pretty dang big, right? And so we need to slim them in quite a bit because their midsection is the largest part, right? Not their thighs. And so we need to get this massive waist to get them in there, but they don't need all that extra room to the leg. So shockingly enough, a lot of the time I'm getting some of my largest, bigger, rounder gentlemen in skinny fit jeans. My point in bringing this up is that none of this matters, right? What matters is the fact that you can kind of slide to your left or your right and say, okay, well, I try to slim, little tight. Okay, great. Maybe I'm going to go to an athletic. We see it happen all the time where slim, man, that's a little loose. Okay, let's go over here to a slim taper. You're just sliding up or down this scale. That's the important part about fit, not that the name of the thing will fit you like that. Okay, so just get rid of that notion ASAP. All right, let's talk about tops and how tops should fit you. So when we think about a perfect top, this encompasses t-shirts, polos, jackets, etc. The first thing that you're going to look at is the shoulder seam. Okay, so the shoulder seam is this little part right through here. So the shoulder seam connects the sleeve to the body, basically. The next thing that we're going to look at is the overall length. Okay, so you can see the end of this or the hem of the shirt there, and then the sleeve length, so where the shirt sleeve ends, and then of course the fit or the cut, which just, as you know, means how wide does the thing fit. Okay, so the length, if we're looking at that first, length should end right around the middle of the groin, right? So we don't want to be down here. We don't want to have, box with legs sticking out of it look, but we don't want to be anywhere near the belt loops either. We don't want to be right at or above the belt loop. We want to usually be somewhere around that middle of the groin point. The sleeve should end right at the hinge of that wrist, right? So usually that fat part of the hand right before it kind of turns out right here, right across this little part, okay? So that gives you just enough room. So if you extend your arm out, you're not gonna catch on anything, but it's also not gonna be too short. The shoulder seam, this right here should end right at the edge of your shoulder bone. Okay, so the shoulder bone, you can kind of follow your collarbone out and you'll reach this point on your arm. That's kind of a little meaty over here, and then over here it's a little bony. I know that's kind of a weird look, but this shoulder seam right here on this shirt, if you can see it, this ends right at the shoulder bone where there's a little bit of bone, and then over here is meat. And if I'm looking at this straight on, it's right at the shoulder drop off, right? So it's like shoulder comes out and then just drops off. Give or take a little, but that's exactly where that should be. So you can see here, it's right there, right before that shoulder drops off. Okay, this will usually tell you if you have the right size. if this seam is over here, usually you need to go up a size. If it's over here, you usually need to go down a size, because what happens if this seam is over here, well, then the sleeve length, is going to be too long. Think about it, right? So we move the sleeve all the way down, sleeve length's going to be here, and then shirt length's going to be here too. So that'll give you a lot of that. Chest and torso, be able to grab a pinch, not a handful. This should follow the shape of your body. So again, this doesn't matter if you are very large in the midsection or if you're very skinny in the midsection. We are scaling it proportionately, right? So we are going to where we can grab a pinch, but not a whole handful. Ideally, it is contouring enough to your body right here so it doesn't look boxy and there's no excessive fabric, right? So we're just trying to get it to where it's not squeezing. Then, of course, there's no strain on the buttons here, right? So there's no tension, there's no pulling. You can see here there's no tension across the chest, across the arms, or the buttons there. Nothing's pulling. It's the same thing for polos and t-shirts, the same exact thing. So we're looking at the sleeve length, the shoulder seam right there, done. The fit or the cut should conform to the body. We can grab a pinch, but not a whole handful. Sleeve or shirt length, right, should be middle of the groin. So again, we can see that here. And mid-groin, all of these you can give or take an inch, right? So there's a little bit of a margin of error, but this is just giving you some general principles. The only change here is just going to be the sleeve length. Where that should fall on short sleeves, so short sleeve button downs, polos, tees, is right where the tricep and the bicep intersect. So usually this is kind of just the middle of the arm, right? The middle of the bicep. The tricep and the bicep intersect right there. And so therefore that is the largest part of your arm. The most visual or most volume around your arm is where your tricep and bicep intersect. So that's going to help you fill out the sleeve of the shirt a little bit more and thus look buffer. So that's just the only change that you would make with short sleeves. But you can see how whether it's a long sleeve, a short sleeve button down, a polo, a t-shirt, it doesn't matter. The same principles still apply. We're trying to just give you frameworks and principles that are timeless, and so you can always understand how something should fit, how something should look, regardless of whether it's a t-shirt or some other different type of shirt. So common ones that you're going to run into here. So you have classic, which is just going to be that kind of classic fit all the way through the shirt. Slim fit, which is going to give you a little bit more of a cutout, and then extra slim, which is going to be the most slim. So we talked about this a little bit before, but again, just scale this proportionately. So if you put on a classic fit shirt and you're like, wow, it's really baggy. Okay, go to a slim. Wow, it's really baggy. Go to an extra slim. Conversely, you can do the same thing. You can go from an extra slim to a classic if it's too tight. So remember that we're just talking about width. So if something is just, you see the buttons pulling here, you see some tension across the chest, might behoove you to go up to a slim. So when we're looking at shirts, you'll see that a lot of manufacturers have these different fits. It's just a really good, easy tip is shop from brands that have a lot of different fits. One of my favorite hacks is just going to places that offer anywhere from 3 to 6 different fits, because you are more than likely going to find something that works, right? And so in this case, you can see we have 3 different fits and all of these different sizes. Chances are we're going to find something that works for us here. So you can see how that works. That'll be usually listed right next to the size section of the shirt. And so this could be a polo. This could be typically, they don't do it for t-shirts, but you can have fits for t-shirts too as well. But that's where you're going to see it. Okay, so just on our last little point on tops here, we should probably talk about how a suit jacket should fit or a blazer should fit. Really, it's fairly similar to how everything else should fit, right? The shoulder seam should be right in line with that shoulder bone, right at that drop-off point. It shouldn't be too high, because then you're going to see your natural shoulder protruding out, and then you get this weird effect where you have like shoulder padding and then natural shoulder. It looks very strange. So really, when you're putting it on, you want to make sure that you're not constricted, but at the same time, it's a suit jacket. So don't start doing jumping jacks and, push-ups and all that. It will be fairly constricting when you compare it to something like your workout t-shirt. So just know that, look at the shoulder seam. Then through the torso, we want to have that same curvature through here following the body, that same little waist suppression. You want to be able to close the jacket without having that button pull. So no tension through here, no tension through the arms. Jacket length should end, usually you want it just covering your butt, and you want to make sure that it's between that first and that second thumb knuckle, somewhere in there. Just easy guidelines, right? Sleeve length. So for these ones, you want to end about 1/4 of an inch or so right above that wrist break, right? That hinge in the wrist. That'll give you just a bit of cuff showing through there. All right. So that's just the general principles of it. So, of how a suit jacket should fit. And again, you can see that many manufacturers will offer different fits of these. So you have a classic fit, slim fit, and there's plenty of brands that will offer extra slim fit too as well. Keep in mind that the size stays the same. So we can do a 40 regular in a classic fit, or we can do it in a slim fit. Pop quiz time, what changes? Nothing other than the width of the item. Okay, so it goes from here to something like here. That's a drastic example, but that's exactly what happens, right? So you're narrowing the torso in. Here's an example of something that doesn't fit too well, a suit jacket that doesn't fit too well, right? So first up, spot that overall we're seeing just a size issue. So you can see here that we have the shoulder, but then you can see the shoulder padding right through here, kind of like what I had described before, how you can see that actual shoulder there. That should be in line with the actual shoulder, right? We can also see all of this tension through the arms through here. Right, so we looked at the shoulder, we can see all the tension through the arms, we can see this button pulling, we can see that the jacket is much, much higher than that first thumb knuckle, and that we probably see part of his butt showing, and then that we're about an inch, maybe even an inch and a quarter higher than we need to be, probably about an inch or so from where that should be. In all reality, he could have fixed this entire thing by going up one size. So do you see here how it's not just an issue where it's too tight through the midsection, it's too tight everywhere. And so for that, we would change the size, not just changing the fit, because everything is too tight, not just one area. And that, again, is the difference between size and fit. Okay, now at this point, you're probably asking, Patrick, what about casual jackets? Casual jackets are the exact same thing, okay? I want you to just go through these with me. Look at the shoulder seam, look at the sleeve length, look at the curvature of the body, right? You can see that on all of these. What changes? Length of the jacket. Some are shorter, some are longer, some are much longer. Jacket length will be largely dictated on the type of the jacket, right? The more it's meant for like weather purposes, protection, etc., the longer the jacket typically is going to be. So in casual jackets, I'm looking for the exact same metrics as I am before, except for length. Doesn't really matter because the jacket will dictate how long it's supposed to be. There's no solid metric across the board that we can look at. But what's great about it is you can use all the same metrics: sleeve length, shoulder seam, all of that, right? The torso fit, all of that is the exact same, right? So casual jackets will fit the exact same as the blazers and the other tops. We're just not looking at length. Let's do a quick one on shoes just so you can understand how a shoe should fit. This is what you're looking at when you're looking at shoes. You're looking at the heel, which encompasses this whole part right here. You're looking at the outsole and the insole, basically the bottom, right? What you feel on the inside and the outside. The toe box, which is everything here. And then the vamp, or how your instep is going to feel, which is kind of this area. All right, and so with length, you typically want a little bit of about a thumb width between the end of the shoe and your toe. This can vary because dress shoes will have more of a point to them, but this is something that you can use for more casual shoes. The width should feel snug, but it shouldn't be constricting. Where you really want to pay attention is this part right here. Do you see this, how it's kind of sewn together right here? This will not stretch. And so if it's tight through here, that's a problem. If it's a little tight through here, not really a big issue. It'll stretch out over time. It'll kind of conform to your foot, but we want to make sure it's not tight or pinching through here. And the heel should have minimal slippage, but a little bit is okay, especially when you're starting to break in the shoe. That's totally fine. A little slippage is okay, but really we would like to have that stay pretty solid. And the sole, again, this is a comfort thing. So it'll break in over time. You really don't have to worry about that too much. There are some shoes that I've had that were terribly uncomfortable when I first bought them, and then they're now my most comfortable shoes because sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to break in.